The ruling in the Kari Lake came down. Not good for those of us in Arizona or those of you around the rest of the country and the world who are concerned about election integrity. Kari Lake has been fighting this for a long time. We've covered the trial and all of the preceding trials and pre-trial proceedings as well, but the opinion came down from the judge after a long 3-day trial. We are going to take a look at it in detail because the news is that Kari Lake will be appealing this, and we need to dig into the opinion to see what is appealable, what will be justified in an appellate memorandum. So we'll take a look at that before we get to Kari Lake and her reaction, where she does tell us there will be an appeal. She also introduces a new effort that is going to be spearheaded by Kari Lake and her team to help ensure this doesn't happen again. And there was a lot of gloating taking place from people like Stephen Richer, who were excited that Kari Lake lost this legal endeavor, but we're not going to forget about their role in this catastrophe of an election, even digging out the old tweets that have now been deleted, showing that Stephen Richer is a big fan of anything except Kari Lake, funding anti-America First candidates. And so we've got a lot to dig into in this segment, so let's start with the ruling from the judge. Released out of the Maricopa County Superior Court, May 22nd, 2023, from the Honorable Peter Thompson Judge out of the Southeast Facility in Maricopa County. The case is Kari Lake versus Katie Hobbs et al. And when we left off the trial, recall that the judge took this opinion under advisement. And as we dig into this, first, let's zoom out a bit and remember that this was a retrial. This was a second trial on a very, very narrow claim, count 3, as interpreted by the Supreme Court and sent back down to the lower level court here in Arizona, the Superior Court. So this isn't a case or a trial where every single thing that we could argue was allowed. In fact, it's the opposite of that. This was a retrial on a very narrow issue. And so this is a ruling on that issue. The judge says, Kari Lake brings a claim of misconduct under Arizona law. And under the law, Kari Lake must prove by clear and convincing evidence, which is a fairly high standard, the following: misconduct on the part of election boards or any members thereof in any counties, any officer making or participating in the election. And she must prove that this misconduct affected the result of the election. And she must prove that result by a competent mathematical basis, not simply an untethered assertion of uncertainty. Now look at this language. The judge says, as narrowed by plaintiff, saying that Kari Lake narrowed the claim. At argument and in her response, Kari Lake brings the claim under Reyes. So when the claim was originally brought, it was a big hula hoop that encompassed all of this stuff in here. But Kari Lake narrowed it, saying we're only arguing this portion of the claim. The judge is saying we will honor your argument, Kari. Now, Kari Lake's team doesn't agree with this. Kari Lake and her team say that's not our argument at all. We're not narrowing this voluntarily. We wanted you to consider all of this stuff and that. And they tried multiple times to allow argument on this outer ring. This looks like COVID, which reminds me of a Hunter Biden painting, but it's supposed to be a legal diagram, okay? The court understands this to be a purposeful concession, saying that Kari Lake agreed to this, rather than trying to cast doubt on a specific number of ballots, a Herculean evidentiary endeavor in these circumstances, okay? She'd have to go in there and disqualify specific ballots, and that would take a lot of work. Instead, Kari Lake attempts to prove that the signature review process for Maricopa County was not conducted pursuant to the law or to the manual. More to the point, they say Kari Lake was obligated to prove that the process for submitting and processing the ballots did not occur. Did not occur. See, again, did not do it. To do so would prove misconduct, and whether this would require setting aside the election or a proportional reduction is unclear. In other words, we don't know what we're supposed to do if Kari Lake would have met that standard, but she didn't. In any event, crafting the remedy is unnecessary because there is no problem. This is what the judge said he was able to glean from trial. Says the evidence the court received does not support Kari Lake's remaining claim. First, Ms. Oneke's testimony makes abundantly clear that level 1 and level 2 signature review did take place in some fashion, right? And we were asking ourselves if the judge was going to care about quality or not. The judge is interpreting Kari Lake's claim to say, Your Honor, we're arguing that signature verification never took place at all. Mechanically, just didn't happen. Obviously, Obviously, that was not Kari Lake's argument. And what we heard was at trial, they rebundled it and they said it is as though the quality control of the signature verification process was so problematic that it is as though it never happened. Yes, you had a bunch of people clicking around like maniacs. 1 second, click, approve, Hobbs. But that's not signature verification. Yes, you can technically throw a bunch of stuff in a pan and put it in the oven, but that doesn't make it dinner, doesn't make it edible. So it is just the mechanics. It's saying quality control matters on one hand versus quality control doesn't matter on the other hand. The judge is taking, we're not talking about quality control. We don't really care what came out of the other end of the sausage factory. As long as something came out, good enough for me. She expressed concern that this review was done hastily and possibly not as thoroughly as she would have liked, but the judge says, but it was done good enough for us. Eat it. Mr. Myers' testimony similarly revealed that he participated at level 1 review and the curing process. So Kari Lake's own witnesses, they said, yeah, I was there. I was working. I was signing stuff or verifying signatures and moving things through and pressing the queue and all that. I was there doing it. They came out and said it was a disaster. Didn't feel right. Didn't seem like it was appropriate. We've got a lot of experience doing this thing, and these people put their names and their reputations on the line, and they said it was a problem. But again, the judge doesn't look at that, doesn't care about the quality of the process, just cares about the process. Was it done? Yeah. Mr. Valenzuela also testified 4 levels of signature verification took place, 2 levels of verification per se, and 2 levels of auditing. The result was the timely verification and or curing of 1.4 million voter signatures. Now, Mr. Valenzuela's testimony, continues the judge, elicited by both parties is the most helpful to the court and the most credible. He was a good witness, very good witness. This is not merely for reasons of honesty. The court makes no findings of dishonesty by any witness and commends those signature reviewers who stepped forward to critique the process as they understood it. While Mr. Oniki and Mr. Myers have ground level experience with signature review, Mr. Valenzuela provided the court with a hands-on view based on 1,600 signatures that he personally reviewed and a broad overview of the entire process based on 33 years of experience. And we don't know how long it took him to sign or to verify those 1,600 signatures. And I'm not sure that we got a question about where he verified those signatures, whether he did it from his office or whether he did it elsewhere. But the fact is, he did. He says, yes, I did 1,600. So there could have been 0 other signatures verified in this entire election. And in my opinion, the judge would have said, well, 1,600's enough under this standard because they just had to show something got done. Now, the political backlash, if that were the case, would be different, obviously, but you get the point. The standard doesn't care about quality. They just cares about quantity. Was it done? Yes or no? 0 or a 1. As Valenzuela testified, the human element of signature review consisted of 153 level 1 reviewers, 43 level 2 reviewers, and 2 ongoing audits. This evidence is, in its own right, clear indicia that the comparative process was undertaken in compliance with the law, putting us outside the scope of the Arizona case called Reyes. There is clear and convincing evidence, says the judge, that the elections process did comply with the law and that there was no misconduct to support a claim. And at trial, Kari Lake in her case attempted to overcome the barriers created by the bar to her complaints about the process that could have been brought before trial, but were not. She conceded she was not challenging signature matches for any individual ballots by making a Reyes claim. Specifically, Kari Lake's response to the motion to dismiss argues, says Maricopa violated the law and did not and could not perform signature verification given the influx of 1.3 million ballots. The complaint sufficiently alleges this process was not followed by Maricopa County, and instead of attempting to cure the ballots, they systematically pushed mismatched ballots through for tabulation without following the required procedures. Now, the way I see this written doesn't make me believe that this is the only way that Maricopa violated the statute. Yeah, they're arguing they did not and could not perform the signature verification. The judge is just reading this extremely narrowly. They did not and could not perform the signature verification. Not that they did the signature verification so poorly that it is as though it was invalid. Okay, so he's just reading their language. So he's just picking something that the lawyers wrote and he says, there you go. You narrowed your claim. Says plaintiff's evidence and arguments do not clear the bar. Plaintiff's strategy shifted shortly thereafter, right? We all noticed this. It had to shift because the judge narrowed the claim at the outset of the case. The judge said in making sure that count 3 survived, survived, that it was extremely narrow. They had to prove it did not happen, is what the judge said. So they had to shift their strategy to attempt to prove that the time per signature is deficient. In other words, it was done, but done so poorly as though it invalidates the entire effort. The judge says Kari Lake argues that 274,000 signatures or so were compared in less than 2 seconds. Plaintiff then zeroes in on 70,000, the number that would be 1 second or less. Lake argues that this is so deficient for signature comparison that it amounts to no process at all, because that's what the judge made them fit into. Okay, the judge issued an advisory under advisement opinion when he was considering count 3, and he said that's the standard you have to meet. Accepting that argument would require the court to rewrite not only the EPM, but Arizona law to insert a minimum time signature for signature verification and specify variables to be considered in the process. So the judge doesn't want to insert himself into elections, which is nice. I wish all judges did that, and all legislatures pushed back when judges tried to do that, but conveniently it only happens one direction in this country thus far. It says Kari Lake asks the court to interpret the word compare as to require the court to engage in a substantive weighing of whether the signature verification met some analytical baseline. But there's several problems with this. The judge is basically saying, look, there is no standard. I can't measure this against anything. They could pass signatures in 1/10 of a second for all I care. I've got nothing to compare it against. There's nothing in the law. It doesn't say 1 second. It doesn't say 3 seconds. It doesn't say 6 seconds. No standard appears in the plain text of the statute. No reviewer is required by statute or by the manual to spend any length of time on a signature. Second, the court takes seriously the directive of the Arizona Supreme Court to take the words as they mean them, as they're written. And so the court will not give weight to Kari Lake's definition of the word compare. It says the recorder or other official must make some determination whether the signatures are consistent, and the court finds that looking at signatures that by and large have consistent characteristics will require only a cursory examination, and thus it takes very little time. The judge says it's not even a big deal. Mr. Valenzuela testified that a level 1 signature reviewer need not even scroll to look at other writing exemplars beyond the most recent one provided if they contain consistent broad strokes. And so the question after the comparison is whether the signatures are consistent to the satisfaction of the recorder or his designee, not the satisfaction of the court. I don't care if the signatures are good or not to the satisfaction of Kari Lake, not to the satisfaction of anybody else. So it would be a violation of my constitutional separation of powers after the recorder has made a comparison to insert itself into the process and reweigh whether a signature is consistent or inconsistent. The judge doesn't want to do it. It says even if the court assumes in the alternative that it must consider whether the comparison was adequate, Mr. Valenzuela, objectively speaking, provided ample evidence that a comparison between records and signatures was conducted in every instance asked to evaluate. The judge says, well, Kari Lake did not demonstrate any lack of compliance. She did bring a signature verification expert who testified what he believed would be necessary if he were to do this. But there's no statutory or regulatory requirement that requires any signature to be given any level of review at any amount of time. And giving all due weight to his expertise, his analysis isn't the law, and it's not a violation of the law. And so it's a nice chart, but it's just his opinion. Instead, Mr. Valenzuela testified the final canvas was accurate, and no clear and convincing evidence, or even a preponderance of the evidence, a lower standard, contradicts him. The court, having weighed all the evidence, now enters the following findings of facts and law. Says, does not find evidence of misconduct, does not find misconduct by any officer participating in the canvass, and says that there was no misconduct that affected the 2022 elections. Therefore, oh man, this totally stinks. It is ordered confirming the election of Katie Hobbs as governor pursuant to ARS the law. It is further ordered that no further matters remain pending except for costs. It is ordered in order that an expedited appeal may be taken. You are ordered to submit your filings very soon. And so that is the final opinion from the judge. Kari Lake has already said she will be appealing this, and we will get to her comments and reaction to it in a short minute. But the one reaction that really stood out to all of this was from Stephen Richer. And we heard a a lot about this individual. In fact, he testified during the first trial, and he was responsible for the election day madness. This was him and Bill Onesie Twosie Gates explaining what a catastrophe this whole thing was.
Hello, Maricopa County. I'm Bill
Hey, Bill.
Gates, the chairman of the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors.
And I'm Stephen Richard, the Maricopa County Recorder.
Good job, Stephen.
And we're here to give you an update on how things are going so far with the election. We've already had almost 44,000 people show up this morning, check in, and be available to vote. And things
be available to vote. That's great. So they're standing around being available to vote. Are they voting? Here's Richard now giving us an explanation.
In that we would get your ballot back. Once we've signature verified it, we would send it to our central tabulators. Ballots that are in here will already be in effect signature verified, so we won't need to confirm identity, but we will central tabulate them. This is actually what the majority of Arizona counties do on election day all the time.
And just one thing to keep in mind, we have 223 vote centers across the county.
So if yours isn't working,
if there are lines at the location you're at or issues with the tabulator, if you would prefer to go to another location, you can do that. Doesn't matter where you go, as long as you're a registered voter here in Maricopa County. Thanks so much, and everybody, if you haven't yet, get out and vote.
Okay, so they're making admissions. They know there's all sorts of election problems on election day, which is when Kari Lake's voters are going to go to the polls and be there in large numbers. And he just says, well, just go to a different polling place. It's just, regular old election. Look at these two smirking idiots. And so they are knowing what's happening right now. My goodness. Huge swaths of Kari Lake voters are showing up on election day, not being allowed to vote. And he just says, well, they're available to vote. That's great that they're available to vote. We have questions about the actual voting. What my issue would be was, okay, well, if we know that election day voters are going to be high population Kari Lake voters, why don't we just, let's say, how many people were disenfranchised on election day? On election day, I don't know, 10%? Okay, fine. Let's take 10% of the mail-in ballots and throw them right in the garbage and just say they don't count and see how Katie Hobbs does after that decision. If you can disenfranchise Kari Lake voters, why can't we disenfranchise Katie Hobbs voters? Seems fair, but they did it on election day and there's no recourse to do it after the mail-in ballots have already been brought in. And it's hard to prove something that never happened. It's hard to prove that the people who didn't vote would have voted because they were disenfranchised at the inception of election day. So they knew exactly what they were doing, and they're very excited about the fact that the judge came out and issued the ruling that he did. And so here is what Stephen Richard, this guy who couldn't even bother to comb his hair, put on a collared shirt when he was on trial last time, he hit Twitter about as giddy as can be. Look at this. At May 22nd, 2023, at 7:51, he says, bombshell. Like he's like giddy. Just, these people just live for this stuff. Says, bombshell. All of the bombshells were lies. Talking about Kari Lake. He's kind of trying to dunk on her here a little bit. And he runs elections in Maricopa County Recorder. This is from his personal account, so he's allowed to do that. But he's still the Maricopa County Recorder. This is who is in charge of this is who is running the last election here. And he's got a history of being somebody who doesn't like Kari Lake, because we know this previously. He deleted this tweet from this pro-democracy group, GOP.com. Here we saw Meg Cunningham back before the Kari Lake election started, November 17th. County Recorder is launching a PAC to support ours running for non-federal AZ offices, quote, who acknowledge the validity of 2020 and condemn J6 as a terrible result, right? So stuff that Kari Lake was directly opposed to, both of those issues. Stephen Richard, back before the 2022 election, says, thanks to a few generous donors, this is now launching. Join me if you care about traditional Republican stuff, except elections, fair elections. He doesn't care about that. But don't believe in conspiracies about 2020 or January 6th like it was a tourist event. Well, it wasn't actually a tourist event, but there were a lot of FBI agents there and HSI agents there and a lot of other people who were responsible for it, who were on the inside of an operation, just like people in Maricopa County were. So he has a history of that, and this is the pro-democracy GOP group that they did support. Let's see if this website is still alive. Yeah, here it is. So you can see, you can go right here. The Arizona election wasn't stolen from us. We Republicans simply had a presidential candidate who lost. This is his, right? This is something that he was supporting and in big favor of, and that was before the election. So if he's sitting there making decisions about how things go during the election, which way do you think he's likely to be inclined to decide, give or take, in a decision that supports Kari Lake or in a decision that doesn't? I think we can all guess. And it's supported by his weird Twitter event last night. He said, "But if you donate now, I promise I'll spend 1/10 of your donation on a completely stupid and worthless appeal," because he does not want you looking into this anymore, undoubtedly. And he also posted this one. Kari Lake loses yet another election court case. What will it be this time? Corrupt judge? Stupid judge? The deep state? Or will it be a mature concession? Did you notice how he left off here? Partisan hack county recorder? That's not on this list. Should be on the list. I would have voted for that one. Partisan hack county recorder. Incompetent Arizona election officials. Some of those should have been on that list. Intentional disenfranchisement of Kari Lake voters by corrupt partisan hacks would have been my vote, but we didn't see any of that on there. So these people are gloating and gleeful, but Kari Lake calls them out, and we're going to get to her reaction in a minute. Before we do, Kari Lake references this person too. Bill Gates, onesie-twosie Bill Gates, who says that he cares about signature verification. In fact, that's what he ran on. This was many months ago in the aftermath of the election, when the whole country was wondering what the heck we were doing here in Arizona. Bill Gates hopped on CNN and had a conversation with them explaining how important signature verification is, even though we now know huge numbers of these were done in seconds, less than a second, some of them. Big batches. For somebody who cares so much about signature verification, his performance certainly didn't look like it matched.
Well, Wolf, thanks for having me. And it's really sad to hear that we have the Republican nominee of governor here in Arizona who's talking like that.
During the election.
You know, the votes that were just released, 78,000, that doesn't happen magically. It happens because of the people behind me. All the people here in Maricopa County elections who are working so hard. They're working 14 to 18 hours.
Shout out to all of the election workers who are working hard. Several of them who testified in this trial, Bill, had a lot of criticisms for you and how you had this whole thing being run. So they're criticizing you too. Not only is the rest of Arizona, and at this time the rest of the country was, but so are the election workers.
Days, every day. We're about to go into a holiday weekend with Veterans Day, and they're going to continue to work those kind of hours on the holiday Friday, on Saturday and Sunday. And I understand that Kari Lake wants us to move quickly, and a lot of people do. But you know what's more important is that this is done accurately. That is the focus. And that, you know, like for all of these mail-in ballots, that those are signature verified. This is very important to me as an elected official, that only eligible people, only eligible votes are counted. I would think that Kari Lake would be interested in that as well.
She is.
That's something that I ran on.
She is interested in it. Yeah, she would love them to be signature verified.
On the Board of Supervisors, I support ID at the polls. And all those things, they might take a little bit more time, but it ensures that only those eligible people are voting.
Not that much more time, just a few seconds actually. 70,000 times 1 second signature verifications. Pretty fast, you can do the math on that. In fact, you can get just some mechanical object to just press yes, verified, 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 verified. So he preens to us all about how concerned he is for the election workers, and I do appreciate anybody who goes and volunteers and works for your government. I mean, God, what a thankless job it is. But that's not the problem here. Here, he is going out in front of the cameras and telling us this is all taking time because signature verification. We got the numbers. The signature verifications were essentially meaningless, and the judge doesn't even care about it. The judge didn't come out with a finding and say that signatures were verified at all. That's not what the finding was today. The finding was that they did signature verification and that there was no evidence that met the standard of other misconduct in the election. Doesn't mean it didn't happen, just means that they couldn't get across that threshold. And people like Bill Gates know that once we're past certain deadlines, once the triggers are in place and Katie Hobbs is in the governor's office, really, really hard to undo that, which is why they go out and tell CNN what they got to tell them as they just keep cramming this through. Here was another clip from onesie-twosie Bill Gates.
When do you anticipate the votes will be counted in total, those 400,000 plus votes?
We will be going into next week. There's some onesie-twosies, again, pursuant to Arizona law, but I think that we'll see the lion's share here wrap up by early next week.
Onesie-twosie Bill Gates.
Next week, can you give me a day? Are we talking Monday? Or we?
Maybe. As long.
Onesie-twosie Bill Gates. That's all they're doing over there, just taking their sweet time, running through, getting what they want done in Arizona. And so the question is, what happens next? Kari Lake has come out. Here she is reacting to the verdict, explaining her take on the judge's ruling.
Entire country. And we went through the legal system and we did not get the verdict that we wanted. Obviously, you all know that. We needed people with courage to act courageously, and we didn't get that. We proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that our elections are a mess. We've shown and we've proved with evidence that chain of custody wasn't followed. We've proven that signature verification is a joke, that it's not even being done, that it's not being done properly when it is being done. And we've proven that the good people of Arizona have been disenfranchised when they showed up on election day to vote and they had to wait in the heat for 4 hours and their vote didn't count. It was spit out. Sometimes the ballots are thrown into garbage bags to be taken downtown and counted. We're the laughing stock of elections here in Arizona. And while that was not the verdict I hoped for, I truly did expect that. I was not shocked by that verdict yesterday, and it will not deter me, not at all. The system is corrupt from top to bottom, and the only way to get an honest system and to root out corruption is to identify it, see it, and lay it all out for everyone to see. And I think we've done a pretty good job at that. I believe that Arizonans now realize that their elections are a mess. This facade that they've been putting on of cameras and transparency, it's a joke. They want to call it a hiccup. It is like projectile vomiting. It's not a hiccup. What they're doing is so wrong to the people of this state, and I'm never going to stop fighting for the people of this state.
All right, so nice statement from Kari Lake explaining that this is bigger than just the trial. Expected to lose, and I think many other people did as well. I think we've all seen this coming. We knew that the standards were going to be very high to meet, and so the reaction is not anything to be unexpected. Now, she does tell us that there will, in fact, be an appeal, and she gets into it with the press a little bit. Here is that exchange.
There is going to be an appeal, and I'm not prepared right now to tell you exactly what our path
appeal is coming,
because we're looking at several paths. Not one, not two, several. But you've not seen the last of our case. Brahm's going to have to cover it again, and I'm sure he'll twist it and spin it. But you haven't seen the last of it because we have the best case. We have evidence, unlike these gaslighting people in the media who want to make you sound like there's no evidence. I can't help it if they're not smart enough to dig through and look at the evidence. But we've got plenty of evidence, and we're going to continue to pursue it. And our legal team will continue to pursue it.
I guess my question is, I'm assuming you've read the judge's decision yesterday.
Yeah.
And I have too. He said some of the evidence you presented is legally irrelevant. The number of seconds it takes to review signatures, that it was your team that chose to pursue the course that said we were going to prove there was no signature verification. So it's not a question of not evidence. The question is, what relevant evidence do you have?
We have relevant evidence that 300,000 roughly ballots were approved in less than 3 seconds. It takes a full second for the ballot image to pop up on the screen. We had an incredible witness, or not a witness, I'm sorry, an expert, a world-renowned expert on this, who said it's impossible to do that. And we also found out, Howie, and I don't think this has been in any of your reporting, that there were an additional 99 people authorized to do voter signature verification behind closed doors, in their office, at home, sitting in their underwear on their sofa. Stephen Richer and Bill Gates, who ran the election, and by the way, also ran a super PAC raising money to try to bring me down.
That's right, they did.
America First candidates who want to question corruption in our election. Those two get to approve signatures behind closed doors where no one can see it. That's not transparency, Howie. Do you think it's... That's one person, and as I said, the system is corrupt from top to bottom. That's one person. Howie, let me ask you a quick question. Do you think that just clicking like this, approve, 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 is signature verification? Do you think that?
Hit that like button while you're thinking about it right now. Like you work for Maricopa County.
I know what the judge said. I read it. I'm asking you, do you think you can approve a signature like that? I think the judge even knows you can't. The judge even knows you can't.
I think that perhaps that if you have two signatures that come up on the screen...
They don't come up, you have to scroll down.
No, you scroll down for additional signatures. That's the point.
It's not possible. It's not possible, Howie. And we are showing this. We're showing it, we're proving it. The whole world is seeing what they're doing. And guess what? If they're doing it in Maricopa County, there's a really good chance they're doing it in a county near you. And
in a county, in a state near you, if they have the roadmap, why don't they just execute it everywhere else? So Kari Lake comes out with another big announcement. She's saying, we're going to use all of this energy and we're going to create our own ballot operation to stop this from happening again in the future. Here's that conversation.
We have been working nonstop to put together a team. And we are officially launching the largest, most extensive ballot chasing operation in our state's history, and frankly, possibly in American history. The courts just ruled that this corrupt election will stand. The courts just ruled that our elections can run lawlessly. The courts have ruled that anything goes. Well, we can play by those same rules, okay? If anything goes, then anything goes. And we are going to start chasing ballots like you've never seen. And I've got an army of moms and dads and citizens behind me who are ready to chase ballots. Because if it's just a ballot that matters, then we can chase ballots too. And we're going to do that. We've got to work in this rigged, corrupt system, and we can do it. We will not allow them to steal another election from we the people. We want our government back. And right now, we have people sitting in these offices at our government who are not duly elected. So we have taken, and we've got millions of dollars committed. We have thousands of volunteers who are dedicated to this. We are better at doing everything, better than the left at doing everything. We know we have better candidates. They put forth people who can't even string 2 or 3 words together. They put forth people who aren't even healthy enough to hold office, who aren't mentally healthy enough to hold office, because they can't find good people who actually will push the garbage they're pushing on America. And they will, as we've seen, do anything possible to stop we the people from taking back our government. But we the people are going to stand up. We've been playing checkers, they've been playing chess, and we're going to show up to a knife fight with a gun, not a knife, okay? We are going to take our massive movement, and we're going to make sure that we employ every single person in it, volunteers, mothers, fathers, individuals, students, even the kids are involved, because it's their future that we're fighting for. And we are going to get out there and register voters. We're going to register every man, woman, child, dog, saguaro, Gila monster. Hey, if the left plays that way, maybe we should start playing that way.
Yes.
I'm being facetious. I'm sure that'll be your headline. But there are no rules where the left comes in. There's no rules at all. We are going to push the envelope. The courts have ruled that anything goes. If anything goes, then anything goes. And we're going to make sure that we push the envelope, the legal envelope, as far as we can push it. And at the same time, we are going to continue to fight our court case. We're not stopping here. We're not stopping with one judge in Mesa who's ruled against us time and time again. We're going to keep going. And we know that the people of this great state want me to stay in this fight. The people of this great country want us to stay in this fight. And we have proof of that. We know it. And the people who are sitting in these state offices, who took control of our government, they know they're frauds. They absolutely know they're frauds, and we all do.
All right, good stuff from Kari Lake. Obviously, a ton of energy, ton of momentum still behind Kari Lake and the movement here in Arizona. Arizona loves Kari Lake, it's obvious. And she says that we're going to reuse that, funnel all of that into a ballot operation, which I think is absolutely appropriate, and something that the Republicans have been lacking on. My question will be, will the Arizona GOP join her? Will the other Republican apparatchiks join in on this? Who knows? But a little bit of a spicy statement there, talking about if they bring a knife, we're going to bring a boom boom. And, you know, it's going to cause some ears to raise. But of course, she's just quoting somebody else who said that, somebody named Barack Obama, who said, if they bring a knife to the fight, we bring a boom boom stick. That was from Barack Obama, June 14th, 2008, which of course now is probably going to be relabeled as being violent, hateful rhetoric from Kari Lake, but in reality was just the rhetoric that the Democrats have been using for some time. Maybe somebody should raid Obama and investigate him and his insurrectionary language. But Kari Lake still full of energy and full of ideas, and I like the fact that they will be working hard in Arizona for the foreseeable future. We'll continue to cover it and support those efforts. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this. We'll look forward to seeing you as we continue to cover Kari Lake.